Hello everybody, I'm Rowan6 with Rowan6 Entertainment, and welcome to a new series, a audiobook series of my fanfiction, The Dragon Hero Dovahkiin. The background art for this fanfiction is created by me. If you're interested in me doing art commissions for you, the link to my business Discord is down below. There's also a link to my community Discord, as well as the fanfiction link. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Chapter 16. As Izuku and Aizawa exit the classroom and step into the hallway to speak, Bakugo takes this time to march over to Lydia with the intent of getting answers out of her. He did not know how Deku completely destroyed the exam score, and if that wasn't bad enough, the three girls who came in with him also beat him in the exam. So he had every intent of getting answers one way or another. Walking over, he slammed his palm onto her desk, releasing a small explosion. As he did that, Lydia just looked at him unimpressed. This caused Bakugo to growl at her, causing him to spark more explosions in an attempt to intimidate her, which it didn't. They stared at each other for a couple of seconds before Bakugo spoke up. "What's your fucking connection with Deku?" Bakugo said as he growled out in fury. "First off, it is none of your business, and second, call Izuku that again, and I'll chop your balls off and feed them to your Pomeranian brethren," Lydia said with so much disgust in her voice that it made everybody in the classroom flinch. But this only made Bakugo angrier. After all, how dare she defy the great Katsuki Bakugo, the future #1 hero? So with even more fury in his voice, he spoke up again. "What the fuck did you say to me, you brown-haired bitch? I'll call Deku, however, I want to call him," Bakugo roared as he prepared to blow Lydia's face off with one of his explosions. But before he could attack Lydia, he was struck by a red light, and in Lydia's place was sitting a Pomeranian chewing a red lump of flesh that he recognized. How could he not recognize it? He was a man, after all, even if it was now a mangled piece of flesh. But why is there now a dog chewing on someone's balls in front of him instead of that brown-haired bitch? Pain struck his lower region, and he finally realized who those testicles belonged to. Looking down at his crotch, he noticed a large amount of blood was pouring from it. Covering his crotch and what was left of his balls, Bakugo looked back at the Pomeranian, who was growling at him hungrily. It was obvious to Bakugo that the little monster in front of him had every intention of finishing his meal. Fear gripped his heart and mind like never before. The next thing he knew, he was running out of the classroom chased by the Pomeranian. As he ran out, Aizawa stepped back in with Izuku and looked absolutely done with the world. "Okay, what happened?" Aizawa asked, because he was completely done with this day. He wouldn't stop hounding Lydia about Izuku, so I cast a fear spell on him, and he ran away like a bitch. Then again, him thinking his balls were ripped off by a rabid Pomeranian would do that to a man. Serena said innocently, like she did absolutely nothing wrong. This caused Aizawa to sigh in exasperation. Why did he have to get the chaotic vampire prankster in his class again? She's like a couple of 1,000 years old, and she acts so childish. Then again, when you live as long as she did, pulling pranks and causing a little bit of mischief is probably the best way to keep yourself entertained and prevent yourself from going insane. Shaking his head from those thoughts, he decided to go deal with Bakugo. Whatever, I do not have enough coffee in my system to deal with this right now, I'm going to go get Bakugo. So why don't you introduce yourself to the class and tell them what you plan on teaching them as a teacher? Aizawa says to Izuku, in a dead tone, before exiting the classroom. This caused everybody to look at Izuku with a bit of confusion, but before any of them could ask a question, Izuku spoke up. Okay, class, I guess I should introduce myself first. I am Izuku Midoriya, the Dragonborn, the hero of Skyrim, the slayer of the dragon Alduin the World Eater, the hero of the Dawn Guard, the slayer of the vampiric Lord Harkin, the savior of Souls Thyme, and the man who defeated the first Dragonborn. And most importantly, I am quirkless. I'll be your teacher for quirks 101 and, for the people who have the aptitude, magic 101. I am also going to be your fellow classmate in the hero course, but my role will be mostly as an assistant teacher more than a student. Any questions? Izuku says as he gives them a bow. Everybody just looked at him stupidly for a full minute before somebody spoke up. Are you telling me that the dark arts actually exist? Fumikage Tokoyami says stoically but with a hint of excitement lacing his voice. Don't mind him, teach, Fumi is into all of that occult stuff. But please don't try to get his hopes up like that, and I think you should take this class seriously. Dark Shadow says as she appears out of Tokoyami. Izuku just blinked at the Dark Shadow for a second. Following a hunch, Izuku cast a spell that made everybody look at him in amazement. The spell sent out an energy pulse that lit up everybody in different colors, including Dark Shadow. Tell me, Tokoyami, who told you Dark Shadow was your quirk? Izuku said, approaching the two. This caused Tokoyama's eyes to widen before narrowing. The quirk doctor said. Why? Tokoyami asked. Because I would like to meet the man and tell him how stupid he is. Tokoyami, Dark Shadow, isn't your quirk, she's your conjoined twin. I first noticed how she spoke and referred to you. Sentient quirks are usually just an extension of somebody's mind, like a split personality. Dark Shadow shows none of the characteristics of a split personality, and the spell I just used confirms that she's indeed a separate entity altogether. The spell lights up all the separate life forces in the area. As you can see, you and Dark Shadow are lighting up as separate entities. And since her life force is showing up pink instead of blue, she sees herself as female. This spell is usually used for clearing rooms or for locating somebody who is hiding in a localized area. But I'm getting off track. Tokoyami, at the end of the school day, make sure you head to the principal's office with your sister. The principal can help you with registering her as a Japanese citizen and get the paperwork sorted. I'll also be calling your parents, who will be arriving at the end of the day. After all, I'm pretty sure they want to know that they have a daughter. Izuku says, smiling, which causes everybody in the classroom, including Dark Shadow and Tokoyami jaws, to drop. And like he never just dropped one of the biggest bombs that altered somebody's life, he continued on to the next topic. Now that's out of the way, back on the topic at hand. I can assure you all, class, that magic is quite real. I and Serena are the current experts on the subject, and Serena will also be acting as my assistant during the classes of Magic 101. As for the other class, Quirk 101, I will be teaching you all how to control your quirks as well as look for other possible applications for them. I'll also be an assistant teacher for Hero 101 with Lydia and Serena helping out when they can. Now, any questions? Izuku says, smiling. This caused nearly everybody to raise their hands in response. You with the raven black hair, speak your name, quirk, and then your question. Izuku says as he points to the tall black-haired girl in the corner. I am Momo Yayorozu, My quirk is called creation. It allows me to create anything non-organic with my lipids as long as I know the molecular structure. My question is, can you explain a little bit about how magic works? Momo says politely. Well, Miss Yayorozu, magic is described as the manipulation of mana. Mana is an energy field that is connected to everything. A person draws in this mana into themselves and then molds and manipulates it to cast spells. Izuku says, answering Yayorozu's question, and after he did, hands shot up again. Izuku then quickly pointed to a boy with blonde hair with a black streak running through it in the shape of a lightning bolt. You with the blonde hair, speak your name and quirk, and then your question. Izuku says as he points to the boy. My name is Denki Kaminari, my quirk is electrification, and my question is, how are you a student and a teacher? How's that supposed to work when you're as young as us? Denki Kaminari says, confused. Well, due to a quirk accident, I was sent to another dimension for 10 years, and when I got back, I was 14 again, and no time had passed over here. So, in short, I am a 24-year-old man stuck in a 14-year-old body. Now, because of how Japanese law works, I am technically legally an adult, but have not completed my full mandatory education that was required by law. So I have to finish my formal education, which is why I'm a student here, not to mention my quirk status forcing me to go to a hero school to get my hero license. But thanks to my experience outstripping all the students here, I was given a teaching position as well as a teaching assistant position. Now I'll cover more on this topic later, but I think that is enough for questions since Aizawa is back. Izuku says, answering the boy's question. Once he did, the door to the classroom opened, and Aizawa walked in with a seething Bakugo following behind him. Everybody, put on your gym uniforms and meet at training field Gamma in 15 minutes. Aizawa said before leaving without another word. Everybody grabbed their uniforms and ran to the changing room. The men's changing room. As Izuku enters the changing room along with the other students, he starts to change into his own uniform. Izuku was just starting to take off his shirt when he heard multiple gasps from the other students. This caused him to mentally facepalm at his own carelessness. He was not ashamed of his own scars, he just didn't want to scare the poor kids. Especially since it was quite obvious he looked like a torture victim, and exposing them to that on their first day was not on his to-do list. His thoughts were interrupted by the excited voice of Kirishima. Dude, your scars are so manly. Where did you get them? The red-haired boy known as Kirishima exclaimed. Izuku looked over his shoulder to see the other students. It was obvious some were terrified since they could tell what probably happened, but there were a few of them that were obviously curious. But one stood out to him, and it was Bakugo. The smug proudness that was present on his face reminded him of a painter looking at a masterpiece that he was proud of. This pissed Izuku off, but then he got an idea that might help the class in the long run. Oh, these are nothing but old scars. Izuku said nonchalantly before pointing to one of them on his arm. This one I got from an orc bandit leader, he was wielding a two-handed blade. They were held up in a fort on the borders of Whiterun. I'm pretty sure I wrote that in my biography. I'll hand you a copy later, or you can just buy one at the bookstore, anyway. Izuku said before pointing to one on his chest, which was 3 jagged cuts that were obviously from a set of claws. This one is from a saber tooth that got lucky. It snuck up on camp, so I wasn't wearing any of my armor when I engaged it. If it wasn't for dealing with that troll den, I wouldn't have to clean my armor that morning. Izuku said. He was going to point to the next one before he was cut off by the red-haired boy. And what about those starburst ones? Who did you have to beat to get those? Kirishima asked, clearly eager to hear more. Mina could not stop talking about this guy being ice-guide and becoming a badass dragon slayer. Mina was so insistent. What she read had to be true, add to that the fact that the man confirmed that he was ice-guide, which made him all the more convinced. Oh, these were from the time I was in middle school, being tortured by my childhood friend turned bully. You probably know him since he's standing right there behind you. Izuku says as he points to Bakugo, who only sneers back in response. Izuku had no problem throwing Bakugo underneath the bus. Plus, the students need to know how dangerous he is in the first place. Don't make false accusations, such actions are unbecoming of a hero. Ida says, chopping his arm robotically. Izuku looked at him with such intensity that made him flinch, but when he spoke, it was with enough venom to poison an army of elephants. Oh, and these just appeared out of nowhere. I'm pretty sure the handprint that has been seared into my flesh probably has his fingerprints seared into it as well. And plus, look at the bastard, he's proud of it. Anyway, I'm dressed, and I'm getting out of here. I'll see you on the field. Izuku said as he finished putting on a shirt and walked out, leaving a shocked group in his wake. Everybody looked at Bakugo, who was smiling proudly as he walked out of the locker room. Don't worry, people. I doubt Bakugo is capable of doing such a thing, it's obvious the boy is lying. After all, they wouldn't allow such a dangerous individual into UA in the first place. Not to mention the boy is obviously delusional. Ida says as he adjusts his glasses. No, they did let somebody dangerous into UA, my friend Mina, who's in our class, had her face blown off by that guy. I saw with my own two eyes how dangerous he is. If it wasn't for Midoriya, Mina's face would have been permanently disfigured. Not to mention, just like Midoriya said, the guy looked smug about it. I say we stay clear of him and keep an eye out to make sure he doesn't do anything. Unless you have a problem with that. Kirishima said as he glared at Ida, which made him flinch. Everybody else just gave him a nod of their heads in agreement before the two of them left the changing room. The women's changing room. The girls were just entering the changing room and were in the process of getting changed when Mina piped up. So you're Lydia and Serena, right? Mina asked the two, who simply blinked at her before nodding. Great, I have so many questions. I read Izuku's book, and I got to know a couple of things. First, were the dragons really big enough to fling a man across a battlefield? And did he really defeat a dragon that could literally devour the world? How big was it? What did it look like? Mina said excitedly before being cut off by Serena's laughter. Oh, honey, you're goddamn too cute, Serena says before grabbing her and hugging her like she was a small child. This caused Mina to pout and Lydia to laugh a bit before responding to her questions. For your questions, Alduin the World Eater was probably only a little bit bigger than the average dragon, which is a little bit bigger than Ryukyu. I honestly do not know how he planned on eating the world, only that he could. And for your last question, yes, it's true, dragons were big enough to throw a person across the battlefield. In fact, I was an unfortunate victim. Lydia says as she shows off her back, where there were 3 claw marks that led to 3 puncture wounds that barely missed her spine. Mina and the rest of the girls winced at the sight. It was obvious to the group that something with claws that rivaled Ryukyu had grabbed hold of her and, if she was telling the truth, flung her across a battlefield. But before Mina could ask the next question, Toru Hagakure, the invisible girl, spoke up. "What are you two talking about? I'm confused." Toru said confused. Her confusion was shared by the rest of the girls. "Oh, that's right, you wouldn't know unless you read his book." Well, like Izuku said, he was ice-guide, and apparently, it was a medieval fantasy world. There, he became a badass hero/dragon slayer, and when he finally came back, he brought Serena and Lydia back with him. "It's how he knows magic," Mina said excitedly. "Are you sure? I'm still very skeptical about this magic stuff," Momo says, frowning. Instantly, Serena had a mischievous smile on her face that Melissa instantly picked up on, and she decided to intervene before Serena could do anything. After all, the last time she had that look, Rumi was scared of her for weeks. "It's true, they've been teaching me magic already. It's how I got into UA. But I can understand you guys not believing them right away, I didn't either. It took me until after my first lesson to believe them after all. But anyway, I did want to ask, what battle did you get that scar in? Izuku told me you got it fighting 2 dragons by yourself. Is that true?" Melissa said, which caused everybody to look back at Lydia. "God, Izuku has a habit of underplaying things, doesn't he?" "Yes, it's true, I was fighting 2 dragons alone, and I would have slain them both easily if we hadn't just come out of 2 days of non-stop fighting Dragr," Lydia says, chuckling a bit. "Dragr, what's that?" the frog girl Tsuyu Azui asks, as she tilts her head a bit in confusion. "They're undead created by the dragon priests to guard ancient Nordic tombs. You see, after Alduin and Marake's defeat, the dragons started gathering the dragon priests from the tombs as well as all the Dragr, and started making strongholds. Our party was sent to clear one of these strongholds out and kill the dragons and all the Dragr there. But the place was heavily fortified, and the dragons were smart, they used their large army of Dragr to wear us out before engaging us. When we were finally past the Dragr, they managed to separate us. Izu had to fight 4 dragons, I had to fight 1, and Lydia fought 2. Luckily for me and Lydia, they weren't elder dragons like Izu's. We managed to beat them, but barely," Serena says as she finishes putting on some clothes. She was going to continue before she heard a scream come from outside their locker room, which made all the girls look worried. "Don't worry, girls, it's just Izu dealing with a pervert. I would have gone out there and stabbed him myself if I didn't smell Izu approaching the fiend." Serena gives them a smile before exiting the changing room with the rest of the girls. When they did, they saw a tied up, beaten, and bruised Mineta being dragged towards the training field by Izuku. "Oh, he's still alive with his balls intact. I'm surprised. Normally, the bastard would either be dead or a tunic," Lydia said, honestly confused. "It's probably because he doesn't want to be charged with murder or assault, or he has something much, much worse planned for the boy. Either way, he's not going to be in the heroics course, that's for sure," Serena says thoughtfully. Then screams from the distance met their ears as everyone winced. "Well, this school has now one less pervert, that's for sure," Lydia says, smiling.
Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!